have unlocked the eternal link to internal source, the key of imagination, your admission, access to the enlightened dimension. A gateway at the junction of darkness and light, the place at which the chaos of our conditioned frame of mind give way to a life in constant flux, only to be mastered through vigilant discipline. Peaceful times may come, testing times may go. This is the Ebb and Flow.
What's up, everybody? Happy Halloween. Welcome to the Ebb and Flow podcast. I'm so stoked to be with you. It's my favorite holiday of the year, without a doubt. And today, we're going to have some fun. I'm joined by my brother, Sean McCormick. Welcome. Thank you.
I'm so excited. This is going to be cool. It's going to be loose and fun, and we can go into all sorts of different cool, weird, spooky paranormal stuff, which is just my wheelhouse. I love this crap.
Yeah, dude. Well, I asked you if you'd be down to talk about aliens and all of that and the paranormal one day, and I know you were down for that. So I feel like this is the best time to do it, especially with how insane the world is right now, leading up to the election.
Yeah.
So let's have some fun, dude.
Yeah.
All right, aliens in particular, because I feel like this is something that's been on my mind lately a lot. I'll share some stories with you about recently. I get up really early in the morning and I go outside and I do my stretching and breath work out in my backyard, and it's still dark out and I can see a lot of stars, and I've been seeing some shit.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I'll save that for a little later, but I know you've had some very interesting experiences. The things you do, float tanks, DMT trips, etc., meeting or coming into contact with intelligent beings. So let's start with that, man.
Yeah. Within the float tank community, and just for those of you who are unfamiliar with what float tanks are, 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt water in a self-contained pod or tank for an hour or an hour and a half. And within this flotation experience, you lose connection with your body. It's specifically designed to sort of disconnect you from your soma, right? Your body. And when you're in that state of consciousness, sort of disconnected from your physical biology, your consciousness goes out in all directions. Consciousness is infinite and expansive. And, if you look back at like the Jungian sort of collective unconscious, we know that we are all part of the same unit, right? We are like little cells on a bigger sort of, galactic organism and also planetary organism. And it just so happens that there are trip reports of people who have talked about their flotation therapy experience. In fact, Duncan Trussell, I heard years and years ago, him talk about, he's into floating. Duncan Trussell is a stand-up comedian, really funny guy. He's been on Joe Rogan a bunch of times. He spoke at the flotation therapy conference a couple years ago. And he mentioned a long time ago that he had this experience with this like gray alien, the classic gray, right? Sort of, small chin, big head, wide black eyes, separated. And that story, that experience of sort of connecting with an entity is documented back into like the 60s and 70s. There are lots of books
with float tanks
specifically.
Interesting.
Yeah. So in these trip reports, there's a book called Tanks for the Memories. There's books by John Lilly, the creator of the float tank, where people would talk about like communion with these entities. And I had one of those experiences just one time, and I've floated over 600 times in a sensory deprivation tank. And I've had, I mean, my religious practice, my spiritual practice is really connected to spirit guides, you know, non-physical entities that have a presence, that have a signature. You know, they're with me now. They're in this room with us. These my spirit guides have names and figures. They have looks. They have personalities. They communicate. We can get into that if we want, but I had one of these classic gray experiences in the float tank, and a couple of my employees have too. And what it was is, there's when you're transcending into a new level of consciousness, and this is, as Terrence McKenna would say, on the natch, right? So I was not high, I wasn't on anything else. I was fasted and in a theta brainwave state. And in that theta brainwave state, you are not really awake, not really asleep. You're really sort of in this meditative state. And oftentimes that state of consciousness is sort of punctuated by sometimes a low level hum. You know, if you've done a lot of psilocybin or DMT or ayahuasca, sometimes that change in frequency kind of comes across as like a little like thing that you kind of tap into.
Yeah.
And one day, this was like late at night after I closed the float centers down, I was wiped out and I wanted to recover. And so I jumped into the float tank, you know, tired and clear headed, and did my thing before, you know, gratitude and intention for the float. And it was really early in my session, I was tired and I really got into that theta state really quickly. And suddenly I felt a presence in the tank with me. And I have felt presence in the tank before. Usually I can recognize that, oh, that's one of my spirit guides. That's Bo. Oh, that's one of my spirit guides. That's Ishem. Like I kind of feel who those guys are.
Yeah.
This was something else. This was something different. And I almost thought to get out of the tank, because I thought maybe somebody had come in to the float center. And my eyes were open, but it's pitch black. And suddenly, about 6 inches in front of my face, I get this image of this gray alien head, like right in front of me. And of course I had read about this, so like it was in my consciousness already that this was like a possibility, just like lots of this stuff, right? Like if you believe, or even if you are just open to the possibility that there are, you know, non-physical entities, you're going to be more likely to see them, right? And so here this thing was, and my body was totally frozen, total body paralysis. And because I've floated so much and because I've meditated so much, the thing that you don't do is freak the fuck out.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't go, holy shit, what the fuck is that? Because then it's out, you're done. Like you're going to lose connection with whatever is going on. Just same thing as meditation, just to like stay in it, like just stay present in it. Don't get too excited.
Just keep breathing. Just
keep breathing, damn it. Like just stay in it. So my body was like totally unmovable. I couldn't move. And I was just confronted by this giant head that was right in front of my face. And I knew through this practice to like engage with it, right? When you're working in these realms in spiritual alchemy, negative spirits, there's no lying, right? You can ask them, are you good? And they will not lie to you. If it's a bad entity, if it's a daemon or friggin' the jinn or whatever, they will either say nothing or they will take off or they'll evade the question. So with this thing in front of me, I said, you know, are you good? And this thing said, I am. Okay. And then it was like, okay, what's next? So I said, who the fuck are you? And the download I got, you know,
Yeah.
the transfer I got was, I'm just visiting.
Mm.
I go, okay. I'll follow you up. Where are you visiting from? I'm from here, but in another dimension. Like I'm from right here, but I'm
Mm.
visiting you from another place.
Mm.
And I said, okay, why did you come here now? And the information that I got was, you invited me. You came to see me. Like, what are you doing here? It was kind of this like, you knocked on my door, fool. And I thought, well, I hadn't thought about that. I maybe should take some ownership of this experience that I'm having. And I said flat out, like, are you an alien? And then it was no reply.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that I like offended it by that question. I thought like, oh, maybe that was rude of me to ask this little gray dude if he was an alien. And then so I asked it again. I was like, hey, I'm not trying to be rude, but you know, like, are you an alien? And the response that I got was, well, anything that is unfamiliar to you is an alien.
Yes.
Mm. And I was like, okay. And then I don't remember like what else kind of beyond that. It was like confirmation. It's a good thing. Okay. Apparently I initiated this connection, which okay. It's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. You sort of didn't really answer the question, didn't identify as an alien, but also didn't say no. And we had this short exchange, a little bit more. And towards the end of this little back and forth, I said to it, well, am I going to see you again? And this thing kind of said, well, that's really up to you. That's not really not up to me. Like really putting the onus on me for this whole thing. It's like, well, okay. All right. Well, I guess we're all done here then. And the thing was like, okay. And then it just sort of like faded out, like got smaller and smaller and smaller, and then was gone.
Wow.
So the next day I started asking around to the staff members, and usually if somebody has like a really cool trip, a really cool float, they'll say like, you know, they'll post it on Slack and say like, hey, check this out. Listen to this. What I just did last night. I fucking, you know, visited the top of the Himalayas, or saw Jwal Cool, or, you know, like connected with, you know, these. And so I said, you know, hey, has anybody experienced this before? And one other of my employees like, oh my God, this week I had the same experience. This thing came and visited me. And I said, well, how was your interaction with it? And it's like, there was no interaction. It was just there for a moment and then it was gone. But obviously lots of questions come of that, right? Like, okay, what is it about the float tank that allows this connection to be established? What does that say about our consciousness? What does that say about the origin of these extraterrestrial entities? And I don't have the answers, but that experience, like you can imagine, kind of shook me a little bit. And I've seen lots of weird shit, but that was like, whoa, I did not expect that.
It was an experience. It was a real experience. It was something you felt deeply in your nervous system. Yeah. It wasn't like an imaginary thing. Sean, how old are you?
36.
Okay, you're a little older than me. I just turned 33. There's so much incredible stuff in that story that I think is so important and so valuable, because I feel like in this incarnation, the era of 2020, this like manifestation of humanity that we are in, people are so literal about these things. You know, so we think it's like, unless you see the fucking Independence Day spaceship coming over the hill and you see the aliens coming out, it's not real, or it doesn't exist. You know, and I think that, you know, our perception of that and our conditioning around that just needs to be obliterated for people to have a complete understanding of what these beings are, non-physical beings, and the reality of those things, because that shit is so real, you know. And whether, you know, whatever you want to say about it, like people could, you know, say, oh, Sean, you just, your imagination manifested that because you read the story about Duncan Truss. You know, it's like you can sort of like do all you can to delegitimize that experience, but the truth of the matter is, like, that was an experience that you had as an individual that literally, it was something, it was, there was an occurrence, there was an interaction with something that was not you.
Right.
You know? So that is so fascinating to me and so on point as far as the experiences I've started having. And it's also, you talking has just highlighted some experiences I've had where, you know, because I come from this very mystical background, but I was still, you know, through childhood and through the conditioning of society, you can't really help how you get conditioned into a state of non-believing, you know? So people, I think, have experiences that they can't explain more often than not, and they just go into immediately their logical brain or their societally conditioned mind comes in and takes over and says, no, that was your imagination. That wasn't real. But this was probably a few months ago. And I can't, there's something profound happened that day. I had a really interesting experience. I think it was this day where I had this experience with, I was driving this former LAPD officer to this podcast that we were recording. And I got to hang out with this guy, and I got to drive him from LA up to Ojai, which is like an hour drive. And on the way back, he was telling me some shit, and it was kind of small talk for a moment. And he could tell, like, I'm not really a small talk guy.
God bless you. God bless you.
I'm just like, I'm not into, I don't, you know, it's like, okay, man, yeah, cool. But all of a sudden he starts telling me about how his sergeant, when he was in the LAPD, was a psychic, and started coming to him with all of this shit about his mother had just passed. The guy I'm driving, his mother had just passed, and his sergeant called him up one day and said, hey, man, how are you doing? He's like, you know, Sarge, I'm hanging in there. He's like, well, your mother wants you to know that she's okay. And he's like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And he's like, well, did she used to wear her hair this way, and she had a rocking chair, and she wore this sweater that was this color? And the guy's like, yeah, how did you know that? And he's like, well, she's sitting right here with me right now. And she came to me to tell you that she's doing okay and not to worry about her. And he was like, what the fuck? And he had all these other experiences happen. And then his dad was passing away like 3 months later, and had this whole experience. So that night, so I have this experience with this guy, right? And that kind of like opened me up because, you know, obviously I already believe in all of this stuff. Like I've sort of passed the point of putting structures around any of this.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm just an open antenna for what the universe has to offer. I'm not like, you want to talk to me about spirits, aliens, non-physical beings, witches, fairies. I don't put any parameters around what is true and what isn't, you know, because of my experience, my understanding of the world, etc., the unseen energies, etc. So I think it was sometime after that, I went to bed kind of early one night. And my wife was still up. She was like in there watching TV. And like winding down because my wife's a lawyer and her fucking mind is just like, it's a machine, dude. She's constantly like working on a case or figuring something out, or, you know, and that's her process. And I love her for that. But I'm in this like hermit mode. I go to bed at like, I'm ready for bed at 9:30, you know? So I go into bed early one night and turn off all the lights. I usually read a little bit, whatever, but I'd fallen asleep and the room was totally black. And all of a sudden it was like someone was in the room and they like slammed a fucking stack of books on the bed. And I like popped up out of bed. I was like, holy shit. And I'm looking around because I thought my wife had come in. And my dog is still asleep next to me because she'll come in and curl up next to me when I go into bed. My dog will sleep next to me before my wife comes in. And my dog hadn't woken up. And I like shot out of bed and I'm like, what? And it was so like there was someone in the room and they had slammed this stack of books on the bed. And I opened the door because I'm like, is my wife in the room? She's still out there watching TV. And I'm like, and I go lie down and it was literally like I had these beings in the room. They were sitting there with me. And I didn't have an interaction, but I could feel them and sense them. And I was like, holy shit, there's somebody here with me. And they were cool. You know, it was sort of that telepathic. I was like, I don't feel afraid. I don't feel afraid, but there's definitely someone here who's maybe even looking after me, who just has a message for me. You know, and I've really been on this thing, and you talking, you know, about your experience, the books being slammed down. And my latest astrological reading with Charlotte, which we got to talk about too at some point. But I'm really in this like research reconnaissance period right now. Like learning a lot, gathering as much information and knowledge about shit as I possibly can. And these entities slamming this stack of books on my bed was crazy. So then, this was then like maybe a month or two later. I've got a bag of mushrooms and I like to microdose. You know?
Buddy.
And I typically fast throughout the day. I don't eat until late in the afternoon. I just feel better. My mind works better. I'm clear. I'm sharper. I could get all my work done. I feel when I eat, I get into a state of contention. I'm like satisfied and I don't really want to do anything after I eat. So this one particular day, I'd woken up and I was like, you know what, I'm feeling like I need some sustenance today. I need this to be like a refuel day. So I ate a big breakfast, which is usually like a lot of protein, a lot of fat, you know, had my coffee. So I ate, and then like early afternoon rolled around and it was time to kind of start getting some stuff done. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna have a mushroom just to kind of like, you know, just to kind of pep me up. So I eat one, and this was a new bag of mushrooms. So I eat one and go about my day. I start doing some stuff. Actually ran and did some errands, came home. I'm feeling pretty good. But I'm like, you know, this is a new bag of mushrooms. I'm not really sure about the strength of these things. I've eaten today. Maybe that nullifies the effects. So I'm going to eat another mushroom. So I ate another one. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to go and get my workout in. So I go and I get this workout in after having eaten this second mushroom. And I was supposed to do a podcast like in an hour. So I was getting in my quick X3 bar workout before my pod. And all of a sudden, I get done with my workout in like 30 minutes, and I just start to descend into, it was literally like I was going down into the caverns of my mind, and I could see all this shit that I thought I had to get done. I was like, oh my God, I have so much to do. And oh shit, I wanted to send these emails, but I'm really like spiraling down into myself right now. And I had to stop everything. I put a yoga mat down in my living room and I sprawled out on my back and I shut my eyes, opened my eyes, and I'm looking up at my ceiling and it's like the kaleidoscope, the what do you call it? The fractalized universe was just there, dude.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh my God, here I am. There's nowhere to go now, you know? I literally wanted to do anything but that. I really didn't want to do like a full-blown trip, you know? But at this point, I've eaten probably 4 grams of mushrooms, you know? So I'm like, okay, well, hey, man, we just got to do this, you know?
Yeah, you bought the ticket.
Yeah, I bought the ticket. You got to take the ride now, brother. So I close my eyes, and this is where your story just hit me. These 2 entities come into view. And there was this masculine cobra fucking entity that was just like all over me, dude. Like analyzing me, looking at me, trying to fucking, I was like, dude, you're really in my grill. Like this thing was just all over me. And it was like a cobra head. And it was abstract. But then it was most definitely like a masculine entity. And then I felt this feminine entity. And it was unseen, but it was working through me. Like it was in my body. And it was scouring my system for all the shit that I was kind of like holding on to.
Mm.
And all this, and all I wanted to do was like get up and do something else. And all of a sudden this voice came in and it's like, there's nowhere to go until you surrender to where you're at. And I was like, and I just let go. And I had this fucking, it ended up being like a 2-hour experience of these entities just moving through me and all of this shit coming to light, my sexuality and my shame and my, you know, like my darkness coming forward. And then it all like released and cause I just allowed it all to be there. I totally let go. And the next thing I know, I'm just in this like golden palace dancing with these fucking giant cobras.
Oh boy.
And it was like, whoa. But your experience with the gray, these were so, you know, how I mean to connect that is these were so not me. These were these non-physical entities that had come to bring me a message, come to help me, you know? And, you know, I think if we start to think, and that thing you said was so interesting too, because it's like, are you an alien? And to an alien, it's like, well, anything that, you know, you could call anything an alien that is strange to you or that is not familiar to you.
Right.
You know, so like, what is an alien? And it's part of that, also that thing about, you know, spelling with words, and we're under spells with the words we use.
Right.
And when you use the term of like alien, it creates this thing that's automatically a symbol of something, you know, that your mind is like trying to build an image of. And if it's not in that image, then you have a more difficult time accepting it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. So it comes with baggage, right? Like the terms we use, the conception that you have for what an alien is or isn't, immediately within an instant brings in, you know, is this an Arnold Schwarzenegger fighting, you know, an alien? Yeah. Is this Predator?
Yeah.
Is this the elongated skull alien from the Alien series?
Yeah.
Is this a gray? Like, is this Close Encounters of the Third Kind?
Yeah.
And to your point, it is rooted in our consciousness.
Yeah.
Because consciousness is the uniting aspect of all of this. Are you open? And when you're, sort of finding yourself into an interesting altered state of consciousness, and you're like, okay, I just gotta succumb to this. I'm not doing what I thought I was going to do today. I'm going to be doing this now. Here we go. Then it's like, oh, then you get all of these things that are kind of included in that consciousness, that whatever sort of vibration you're tapped into. When you think about like alien crafts and you look at the research, it's like, it's all about vibration and consciousness. It has little to do with metals and propulsion. It has more to do with consciousness.
Right.
And this goes way back into so many different cultures, ancient aliens, all of these classic, antiquity, these cultures have descriptions, Achikoso or whatever
Ted, Dr. Ted.
Yeah. No, I was talking, there's, it's from Graham Hancock's.
Oh.
Tall, blue-eyed, blonde-haired culture builders, right?
Uh-huh. Oh, interesting.
And these, they're in Indian lore, they're in Native American lore, they're in South American lore, and they come through the consciousness. They're sort of brought in this way. That to me is the portal. The portal into connecting with these things is through this expanded consciousness.
Yes.
And if you're open to it and you're in the right place at the right time and you're vibrating on a certain wavelength, you're going to be more receptive. You don't have to be on DMT or ayahuasca, but in a float tank, sober as a nun, tired.
Yeah.
You're open to these experiences. Consciousness is really the portal, and that's how these entities. You think about the different types, right? There's like the blue avions, which are like blue bird-like aliens.
Uh-huh.
There's the Hathors, which are in Egypt lore, and they have short oval heads and big ears out to the sides. And the Hathors.
Dude, wait a minute. We got to stop there, bro.
Yeah. Okay.
The Hathors.
The Hathors.
So this past weekend, we took a family trip to Malibu. We love to go to Malibu, rent a house. Like, this was up in the mountains. It was amazing. And we always bring our cards. I've got my Hermetic tarot deck right here.
Ooh.
That literally cards jump out of this fucking thing at me. But we also just got this divine goddess deck. And it's all the goddesses from every different culture. And we were doing readings, because that's what we do, with my mom and my aunt, my wife and my daughter and me. My goddesses, and we're doing a reading. And my daughter, who's 8, gives me a divine goddess reading out of the goddess deck. And I say, my question was, because I had just come out of the astrology reading with Charlotte, and I'm just like, fucking, I've had so many readings that are so profound, and like my story is just super rich. So I'm thinking to myself, what can I ask this deck? And I go, I want it to be revealed to me, who is my mother goddess? Like, who is my mother goddess? And Hathor comes up. And Hathor is the Egyptian goddess of joy and love, but she's also like the goddess of fucking destruction and new beginnings and all of that. So it's super powerful, right? And I'm like, that makes total sense to me. Because if anything, in my life path, one of the prevailing principles is, I know I'm on the right track if I'm always coming from a place of living in joy, finding my joy, That night, dude, I have a fucking dream where it's this thing, it's Hathor Helgor. This name keeps it's just like over and over. Hathor Helgor, Helgor, Hathor, Hathor, Helgor. I'm like, what the fuck does this mean? So I look it up, and so it leads me into learning more about Hathor, the goddess. And Helgor is like, I don't know where that came from. I might have misinterpreted that part of it, but I looked that up, and that's like a Marvel Comics demon called Helgor. And there's all kinds of weird shit about Helgor, the name. But so I'm like, Hathor, okay, this is really profound. And now you're talking to me about fucking the Hathors.
Yeah, dude.
And I've had psychics and mediums say, Eb, you were an Egyptian priest in a past life. You were part of, and so I don't know. I mean, my lineage, I think, goes fucking way back to this, but Hathor is something of significance for me.
Awesome.
You know? So
Yeah.
that's so interesting that you brought that up. I had no idea that that was a species of alien.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a picture here. So like the Hathor face, very wide, cow ears kind of on the side,
Yes.
very, very soft, very feminine. They're supposedly a race, right?
Interesting.
The way that I begin to like scratch the surface and sort of wade into this is to understand the complexity of beings on this planet in this time is immense, right? We have all of these little bugs and plants and trees and animals, right? Like the biodiversity on this planet that we know of is phenomenal, and we've got water breathers and air breathers and things without arms, and well, think about the biodiversity of species of different things across the galaxy.
Yeah.
Right. So if the Hathors have been here or are of here or visit here or have had some sort of influence in the Egyptian lineage, which the Egyptian lineage, traces back from Egypt to Rome into Lemuria, and there's a strong chance that there is this massive amount of intergalactic alien races that are maybe slightly interested in us or not. But you think about the Pleiadians, the seven sisters of the Pleiades, and some say that they use Mount Shasta in Northern California as like they live underneath there, and whether that's a portal or a physical location underneath Mount Shasta. Mount Shasta is a spiritual destination across the planet. They say that that Mount Shasta is one of 7 mountain peaks on the planet that are part of the chakra system of Gaia. So there's lots and lots of UFO sightings around Mount Shasta, and specifically Mount Shasta is linked to the Pleiadians.
Interesting.
Right. And so Mount Shasta may or may not have been part of Lemuria. Mount Shasta, there's something significant about there. And I'm fascinated by the Pleiadians for a couple of reasons.
Yeah, me too.
Like before I went down and asked an ayahuasca shaman, like, hey, what's this all about? Like, what are we doing? Like, what the fuck? Where are we from? Come on, give it to me. Which they fucking hate that question, right? This is like 2 years before I asked Tamara, her what's this all about? Where are we from? I was driving through Mount Shasta. My wife and I decided to take a road trip down to Santa Cruz. And we decided on a whim that we would go see some friends in Santa Cruz. So we drove from Seattle to Santa Cruz like through the night. And I was driving, and it was like 2:00 in the morning as we were kind of cruising up to Mount Shasta. My wife was asleep. And I'm like, chugging AM, PM coffee. And I've got like chewing tobacco and sunflower seeds. And I'm just like white knuckling it down Highway 1, like heading through Mount Shasta. And as we approached it, it's on the left-hand side as we're going south. I'm like real tired and I'm a little loopy, and I maybe should not have been driving because I was super tired, but I was also strung out on caffeine and nicotine. As we're driving down the highway, I'm on high alert because my wife is asleep, and we're driving and there's no other cars on the road at 1:00 in the morning. And about 100 yards down the road, I see this like ghostly sort of apparition on the left-hand side, on the mountainside. And like a deer crossing the road. I'm like, whoa, oh Jesus. Like I start to slow down a little bit because I'm going too fast. And I'm thinking, well, that must be a deer. Thing's fucking gigantic though. It's like an 8-foot tall deer. I start to slow down, and this sort of ghostly apparition turns out that it's tall and narrow and white. And as I get closer, this thing walks out into the middle of the road. And I can see that it's like a humanoid looking thing. It had a head, and it had this long flowing hair and this long flowing robe as it passes across the street as we're driving to it. And I'm like, what do I do? Do I hit the brakes? Do I swerve? I'm not sure what I should do. I'm slowing down, and this thing is like slowly crossing in front of our car. And my wife is asleep, and I go, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. And she wakes up and she's like, slow down. Like she's got the receipt reclined, and this thing, like I barely miss it as it crosses in front of the car. And it does this like sort of like, the classic Sasquatch footage where it's like walking and looking at you as it's passing.
Yeah.
This did that. And I just barely miss it as it looks back toward my direction. And I'm like, the car like lights up from the inside with like this bright white light from inside the car. I barely miss it. I cruise over, and then I'm like fucking shaking. Like, what was that? I feel this like intense, like I saw this thing saw me. I almost hit it. It had this, it was like really dense smoke, but I could see the figure. I pulled off to the side, pulled off to a gas station, like woke up my wife, and I was like, hey, like you got to hear this. And she's like, you're tripping. Like, what? what? And later, I started to do a little bit of research about what happens at Mount Shasta. What's the mystical significance? And then I learn about, this is like a portal. This is a place where people have had these incredible experiences, walking into a cave in Shasta and like coming out, having all of this like ascended consciousness, this like total consciousness. So like a year later, I'm in my first ayahuasca session. We do 3 nights. And at the end of the third night, as people are kind of packing up their stuff to head home, I walk up to Tamara and I'm talking about some of my experiences. And I was like, what is the connection between the stars and what we're doing here with this plant medicine? And she said, well, they are the same thing. And I said, what do you mean? She's like, we are them. They are us, man. And I said, well, where are we from? And she goes, we're from the Seven Sisters. We're from the Pleiades.
Wow.
And I was like, how have you come to know that? And she says, I have done so many of these sessions over so many years. I have relationships with these entities. They come into ceremony with me. And that's where we come from. And the connection between the Pleiades and the Pleiadians, like visiting Shasta, whether or not I saw, Umtuk, the Pleiadian priest, or not, I don't know.
You
but
probably did, bro.
I felt it shook me to my core, man.
Dude, I mean, Jesus Christ, dude. First of all, so I've told you about my ancestor, Mary Bliss Parsons, who came to America in like 1638, was on trial for witchcraft 3 times, got off all the time, her and her husband were very, her husband, I guess, was more well-to-do because she had so many sort of feuds and, you know, battles with the people of the town because everyone was terrified of her. But so all these books have been written about her. And one of the books I read, this was a couple years ago, and it's talking about how Mary Bliss says our ancestors are from the Pleiades. So that's like what I'm talking about, the fucking, you know, witchcraft, aliens, ghosts, the supernatural, like it's all connected, you know, and the deeper you go into the world of this stuff, the paranormal, supernatural, like it's all the same things. It's all this, it's all consciousness, like you said, dude. Like that is the web that we're living in, and it doesn't matter like where it comes from, what it is, because it's all the same thing, you know. And so I mean that's just so mind-blowing, dude. Oh my god. Well, Mount Shasta keeps coming up, so I gotta go. We gotta go.
We should go together. We should go hiking at Mount Shasta.
Let's go, man.
Let's go.
All right, so we're gonna do that.
Yeah,
definitely. But also, dude, so on my birthday was October 14th. And I got up kind of like especially early and went outside. Like I said, I go outside every morning. It's about 6 a.m., give or take 20 minutes. And it was especially early on my birthday. I'd gotten up like 5:30. And I was excited about the day because I always like to have my birthday be like a tone setter of what the year's going to be, you know?
Yeah.
So I go outside and it's pitch black out there and I'm doing my stretching and I look up at the sky and it's totally dark and I could see more stars than I feel like I've been able to see in the past. Like I could see Orion's belt, Orion, Little Dipper, Big Dipper, and then Orion's arrows point to the Pleiades. And I could see the Pleiades there too. And then I'm looking, and one of these fucking stars, it's like a little beam of light, is fucking gliding across the sky. And I'm like, come on, man, it's my birthday, you know? And, you know, it was way too far to be an airplane. It was, you know, moving way too fast across the sky to be anything that you would see, a helicopter, etc. I've talked to, you know, in the past, I think I've seen things like this and people go, oh, that's a satellite or something. But this literally looked like a star, and not a shooting star, because a shooting star will fly across and vanish.
Right.
This thing was just an orb of light, like a starlight orb, gliding across the sky, and it must have gone for miles. It went as far as the sky was open. And I was like, holy shit, dude. There they are. You know what I mean?
Happy birthday, buddy.
Yeah, happy birthday to me. You know, that's it. My whole day is made. I don't need anything else to happen. But yeah, dude, that's fascinating. The Pleiades, and then your shaman on your ayahuasca ceremony saying we're from the Pleiades. Yeah. What did she mean by that? Humans?
Humans. I think she meant that we are descended from them. That we, whether it's the, you know, the Anunnaki coming down and having, you know, fallen angels having sex with these beautiful human women and
right,
making the human race. Or maybe, you know, we've forgotten that they're still here, that we are them,
right?
That they are us, and they sent out a faction, you know.
Yeah, but then again, when you start going into that and asking all those questions, you realize like it doesn't really matter, right? Because it's like we are them. That's just kind of the kernel of truth in that.
Right. Well, we are all. We are all, whether you're in the same town, in the same country, on the same planet, on another planet, we're all residents of this universe, of this galaxy. We are connected.
Yeah.
We are not disconnected. We are totally connected. And it's just a matter of how you come to terms with that, and what you're willing to entertain, what sort of ideas you're willing to, you don't have to buy all of it. You don't have to accept it. You don't have to make it part of your reality, but just to stay open to the possibility, because this is not new stuff. Like this is all so many ancient civilizations have these stories of visitations. I mean, you look at like the Aztec murals of like the spaceman, you know, on a Mayan mural carved in the rock, and he's like laid back, doing switches and wearing the fucking helmet, the whole thing. Yeah, it's like there's interpretations of that, and you know, the native, the Lakota people, you know, talk about the blue kachina. Like it's part of us, and we're just fucking distracted by stuff so that we can't really see it. Let me tell you my UFO story too. So
yes, dude.
So this was probably in 2004, 2005. My wife was out of town for she went on a cruise with her sister, and so I was at our studio apartment alone, and it was at the end of the night. I hadn't smoked any weed yet. Pour a glass of wine and just step out onto the back balcony. It's like overcast, and I'm just sort of like looking up at this. I always do, and it's nighttime. Look up in the stars, and here in Seattle, you know, it's now dark at our house at like 5:45, 6 o'clock. So this is like, you know, it's probably 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and I go out there and I kind of see something similar. I'm like, oh, something's moving across the sky, and I thought, well, that's strange. What is that? And it was a constant rate of speed. It was moving left to right. I sort of watched it for a while. I was like, well, that's weird. That could be a satellite. It could be UFO. I don't really know, but I keep watching it. And then after I watch it for like, you know, 30 seconds, I see this other thing that's bigger. It's bigger than the biggest star in the sky. And suddenly it starts to like strobe. And lots of planets, when you look at them, you know, look at stars, they'll sort of flicker and stuff like that. So I'm like watching it like get bigger and strobe, like wow. I'm like, wow, that's neat. I'm like glued to it, watching it. And then all of a sudden it starts to now it's got like 1, 2, 3, 4 different lights on the outside of it. And it starts like rotating slowly, still white. I'm like, what the fuck? So I'm watching, I'm like, well, I pull out my phone. It was like a flip phone, right? At that time. Like, not an awesome camera. And I'm like, pointing my little Motorola flip phone at it, like, oh, maybe I could take a picture. I can't take a picture of that shit. Yeah. Like watching it. It's like 2 or 3 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes go by, and I'm still watching it. And then now there's like multicolored of lights. Now it's like blue and green and red and orange, and it's like strobing, and it's moving. So it's rotating. And I'm glued to this thing, and I'm like, I cannot possibly look away. I can't call anybody. I kind of see that it's in like the northwest sky. I keep watching it, and then it starts to like scribble. It like doing these like little symbols, these little squiggly, like it'll go up, and then move around, all in this kind of same area. And I watched that damn thing for like 15 minutes. And I'm like, and then the clouds came in, and I lost it. And I'm like, this has got to be on the news. Like somebody, like, I turn the news on, nobody's talking about it. I look at like seattletimes.com to see if anybody else has reported this. Nobody else reported this. I was so like shook by it. I was so like, I just saw a fucking UFO. Holy shit. I call the UFO reporting hotline. I call them up, and it's like a UFO reporting hotline.
Oh my God. It's like Ghostbusters.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I need your name, email address, and location, please. So I'm like, you know, Sean McCormick, blah, 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 blah. Here I am. I'm in Seattle. It's like, she's like, okay, what would you like to report? And I was like, I think I just saw a UFO. And she goes, hold, please. So I'm like, fuck, okay. So then this other guy gets on the phone. He's like, hello, my name's Dexter Thomason, and I would love to hear what you saw. And where are you from? Your name, information. So I'm like, I explained to him all of this, and he's like, oh, very fascinating. He goes, I believe I know what you saw. And I go,
Okay.
Okay, what did I see? And he goes, well, judging by your geographical location, the time at which you saw this, the part of the sky in which you saw this thing, I believe that you saw the International Space Station making its trajectory across the da 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 da. And I was like, no, I didn't see that. I for sure saw that. This was after that. And he's like, and he goes, okay, please, tell me more. So I explained it a little bit more. And he goes, I'm going to have to ask you to go to UFO Reporting Network and please log in, provide your details, and use a detailed description of what you saw. And I was like, I go, is that it? And he goes, that's it. You may or may not have seen an unidentified flying object. Click. So I log in and I fill out this really detailed report, everything that I saw, all the stuff, the time, the place in the sky that I fill it out. I went back and checked. Like a month later to see if anybody else had seen the same thing. And there was one other person that reported the same thing that I saw that was also in my same city. It was just
night.
That night.
Wow.
So somebody else saw exactly what I saw and they described it the same way that I did. I didn't get abducted. I didn't get taken up into the starship or anything, but I saw some shit, man.
Dude, man, I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible because we are just so programmed and conditioned to believe that there's nothing else. And life is this really boring, monotonous, consumerist experience,
Yeah.
And it's like, so I guess for guys like us, because I think we're the same, and that there's no question to us that this shit's real.
Yeah.
That there's intelligent life out there, whether it's in this dimension or in another dimension that's right up against us that we just can't perceive with our eyes. I don't know, man. Do you think, I guess, the lasting, the only questions left to ask are, is there going to be a day in our lifetime where the aliens literally come down and want to talk? Is that something they're even interested in? Are we gonna, here's what one thing I will say is, if there are any malevolent aliens out there who wanted to enslave us or destroy us, maybe they're already doing that through technology and social media and the billionaire elitist egomaniac assholes who are trying to destroy life as we know it.
Yeah.
Perhaps they're already inhabited by these malevolent beings. But if there were the Independence Day style aliens who just wanted to fucking wipe this planet clean, they would have done that already.
You'd think.
I mean, it would be so easy. If you had the technology to just fucking wipe life off the face of a planet. I mean, they wouldn't even bother checking us out. They would have done that already.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to go to war with ants. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
So that, I think, hey, if, there's a fucking reptilian slug inhabiting the skin suit of Bill Gates, I think that's a possibility, without a doubt.
Yeah, read David Icke.
Yeah, I mean, but, do you think there's beyond the sort of documented interaction with individuals, for whatever reason that is, to download information, to expand the consciousness or awareness of people, do you think, I mean, I don't know, I don't really foresee an alien spaceship landing in DC and wanting to talk to the president, I don't see that as being of interest to them.
I try to stay really skeptical because I am
Right.
so, right?
Yeah. Totally.
And the skeptic in me that's along the lines of I just listened to, I don't know if you listened to Sam Tripoli's Tinfoil Hat
Hmm.
podcast. Oh boy.
I should check it out.
Higher Side Chats with Greg Carlwood.
Okay.
Oh boy, good luck. You're booked up for the weekend, bro. Like you're Tinfoil Hat from Sam Tripoli and the Higher Side Chats with Greg Carlwood. The Tinfoil Hat podcast just had a guest, Isaac Weishaupt. And I don't know if you know the last name Weishaupt.
Yeah, that name is super familiar.
And I don't know the connection between this Isaac Weishaupt or I'm just gonna I'm gonna find it really quick because it's worth referencing. The I think it might even be Isaac Weishaupt is like the founder of the Illuminati, going way back. And this Isaac Weishaupt has his own podcast, Pickwick and Frolic, and he talks about UFO disclosure. And what he is saying is that they are a manifestation of our consciousness. We're fed these narratives about what a gray alien is or what a draconian alien is, and we are sort of being programmed to believe these alien entities are real. He's a major skeptic, and so I stay open to the skepticism because I don't want to be too gullible, even though I've seen some wacky shit and I know what I saw and I know what I felt. But he posits that these are all constructs of consciousness. And in this conversation, they talk about Betty and Barney Hill, who were the first abductees. Just for everybody listening, go do some research on Betty and Barney Hill. They were like farmers from Arkansas or something. They got,
I think in like New Hampshire, they were in New England.
Yeah.
Because my grandmother was in a movie where she played Betty Hill. Because the Betty and Barney, it was a white woman and a black dude. I know. How fucking weird, man. How fucking weird is that?
Your family tree is unbelievable. My goodness.
Yeah, my grandmother is Stell Parsons. She's an actress for anybody who's never heard me reference her before. I'm going to have her on the show to talk.
Nice.
But she was in a movie about their story. And James Earl Jones played her husband.
I've not seen this.
But they're one of the most famous abduction stories of all time.
Yeah.
And did they come into contact with Indrid Cold?
I don't know Indrid Cold.
Oh, that's like a whole other, that's like the dude who was on the side of the road that they came up to. Or he might be different. But then he's connected to the Mothman prophecies. But like, I can't go ahead. I didn't mean to.
No.
It's so
weird, man. Of course, your grandmother played Betty Hill in a film.
Yeah, it's so weird, dude.
That was like the first. They did like hypnosis to basically pull out this memory of this abduction because they lost time. They were put back in a different location. Yeah. They were scared shitless. They went to through regressive hypnosis to figure out like what they saw, and their stories in separate rooms with different people corroborated. Like we were pulled up into this ship, and all these little things were around us, and so they get into that a little bit. But
what does Isaac say about something like that?
So I don't remember exactly what they talked about it in it, but they do address it because the hosts, Sam Tripoli and his guys on the podcast, are like, yeah, man, like they're really into it, and Weishaupt's like saying it's not what we think it is. This is a sort of a mental construct, and so when you say like, are they gonna touch down and say what's up? There's theories about them touching base with like Dwight D. Eisenhower. And Eisenhower mentioning something about like connecting and how important it is for us to connect with extraterrestrials. they also say, conspiracy theorists say that there's going to be, Project Bluebeam is going to be part of some big, the next wave. And there's some oligarch billionaire from yesteryear that says, like, the last thing that will happen before the new world order happens, before the real transfer of power, is going to be an alien invasion. Don't believe it. You're going to use holograms to, like, show us some starship. It's going to be reported on. It's going to be fully concocted, and it's not real. And that's what's going to be the thing that people, like, really freak out about. And then just say, we'll do whatever you say. And then the powers that be come in and say, okay, well then you're all heading to FEMA camps and we're going to, depopulate. So, like, there's people making money on it in Hollywood. There's people making money on it, in psychic shops. There's people that are having real experiences. There's, do you remember, are you familiar with the Phoenix Lights phenomenon?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
It was like a 3-hour alien UFO sighting that was seen by like 8,000 people in Phoenix. Right. And there's tons of video footage about it.
Yeah.
And what Weishaupt says is that it might be drones. Like, that was drones. We're only seeing technology. We're 30 years behind. What we have technology wise is like 30 years behind what's actually real. He was suggesting that was a ruse too, that was a show. But something like that, when you look at the Phoenix Lights, it was like 25 lights of this football field sized starship that slowly crept over downtown Phoenix for like a couple of hours, and tons of people videoed it. Tons and tons of people saw it. There's books written about it and so forth. But I think that I don't know what I think. I honestly, I don't know what, if they are these massively powerful, sort of diverse races of different extraterrestrials from all different corners of the galaxy. They're probably just watching us and thinking, dude, these guys are fucking weird.
Yeah.
These like pale monkey things just keep fighting each other, bombing each other, and watching porn, and like I think that there's a strong chance that we're going to have increased acknowledgement of things from out of our solar system, things from out of our solar system, like the Navy, admitted to the tic-tac-toe, or the tic-tac shaped craft. This was like earlier this year.
Yeah.
The Tom DeLonge Into the Stars Academy.
Yeah.
Some people say that that's a ruse. It's made up. And some people say that, that's part of a larger agenda, but it's never going to go away. We're always going to be fascinated by it. And I don't know that we'll ever really have a clear picture, like, oh, this is exactly what things are. Yes, the blue avions and the Hathors and the Pleiadians, and the Arcturians they're all different races, and they're all kind of hanging out and checking us out. I don't know, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, dude.
What do you think?
I don't know either. I don't know either. I mean, at this stage in the game with everything happening, I'm taking life one fucking day at a time,
Smart.
I mean, beyond that, I can't really begin to even think about what's next or what could happen, or I'm just like in what is.
Yeah, buddy.
And, and I mean, my thoughts are sort of how I preempted that question. I don't think aliens have any interest. I think they look it, if aliens are examining humans, first of all, they're like, this is all hysterical, what you guys have created as your like belief system and your political system. Like, this is a joke as far as we're concerned.
Yeah.
So the idea that they would come down and say, hey, President of the United States, we want to talk like that,
Hey, Donnie.
or any like quote unquote political leader at this point. I think
Right.
we've, if you're paying attention, you can't help but notice and realize that this is all a joke. And anyone who's in a place of quote unquote authority, it's like they have about as much authority as we're willing to give these people,
Right.
So, and the people in power are certainly not the smartest and most intelligent, most highest level consciousness people on the planet. That's for damn sure. So as far as I don't think that's going to happen. I think if there are malevolent beings out there in this universe, they are already here, and they're fucking doing whatever they can to manipulate human beings to the greatest extent possible through technology, through social media, through the fucking energy waves in the air. So, I think that we probably are aliens, man. We're probably either we're the descendants of them, we were created by them, we were manufactured to do certain things. Like I had Billy Carson from Forbidden Knowledge. Do you know him?
Yeah, you did? How did I miss that?
Check it out. It was one of my earliest episodes. So
man.
And he's done deep dives on the Sumerian texts and the Emerald tablets, and he's fucking translated all this shit. And basically he's like Enki and Enlil, the Sumerian god kings, brothers that existed, thousands of years ago. They were Anunnaki who came down. They created humans to basically be their slave race. We were halfway liberated through that process, and sort of allowed or broke free to a certain extent to sort of create and prosper life as we know it today, as it's evolved into what it is now. But they're still here. And then you start getting into like Thoth, and who's the ancient Egyptian god of wisdom and magic, and he sort of was the liberator of humanity. So he would say that we are descendants of aliens. We are the aliens. And that this is a battle that goes back for eternity. This battle of the stars that's sort of manifested itself here on Earth. I don't know, man. I think that whatever the deal is, it's important for people to just pay attention, pay attention to your own experience. And, I don't know, because at the same time I look around and there's a lot of people living at a very low vibration, who I don't know if you'll ever get to experience anything outside of, sort of your matrix in this lifetime, at least.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, it's easier and easier and easier and easier to shut down and recoil and hunker down and get distracted by, bad food, bad TV, and bad vibes. And, if we were going to be enslaved and fear was the fuel that fueled the energy for these, reptilian dark lords, like it's going pretty well for them. There's a lot of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And at the same time, though, I think we're in this really weird time where I think for guys like us, people like us who are really in this very open, I'm not going to say like higher level of consciousness, even though that's what I think it is, but it's more like an open awareness to your life and the world around you and what's going on. It seems really dire right now. It feels really dire because all of these veils are being lifted, the political veils, the power structures, and how people think and who people really are and the functioning mechanisms of how people operate. It's all being revealed, and it's like, whoa, there is a lot of fear. There is a lot of fear out there, and for people who have sort of lifted themselves out of that level of being, out of the fear mechanism, who are into the light, who are into a life of hope and purpose-driven living, it can look really scary and dark. But I think the flip side of that is there's a lot of people that are coming into awareness and coming into openness and understanding of, what everything is and the reality of things. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. And I believe that the next generation is going to be better than we are. They're going to be, you're constantly amazed by the consciousness of your daughter. I'm constantly in awe by the awareness of my kids, and they're, as if you watch the news, it's scary. And if you go outside and go to the beach and go for a swim, it ain't, and
totally,
and,
man.
and it's okay to be curious, and it's okay to want to be the best version of you. And these answers may unfold in time. But it's also not necessarily up to us to decide how this plays out. We get to be here for a very short time.
Yeah.
And then we leave, and then we come back.
Yeah.
We leave again, and we come back, and we leave and come back, and we learn lessons and grow and grow our souls. Learn these important lessons. There's this Terence McKenna quote that I love, which is, reality is not only stranger than we suppose, it's stranger than we can suppose. We can't even wrap our brains around how complex this universe is. And that's kind of a good feeling to know that we don't know. So hug your family, grow vegetables in your backyard, and have meaningful conversations.
Totally, dude. Find joy, man, at the end of the day. Fuck.
Yeah.
Dude, I've had these experiences. I think we'll wrap on this, because that quote, it brings me to this. But I've had a lot of experiences lately. I'll just be sitting there in my living room at night, winding down with my wife, and all of a sudden I am struck by how fucking intensely weird it is to be a human.
Yeah.
It's like all of a sudden I forgot everything, and I come back and I'm in this head looking out.
Yeah.
And maybe I've had a puff of a joint or something, but I'm like, whoa, this is so fucking bizarre.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I think about that because, I remember back to times in my life where I was so caught up in the things that, like the mundane stuff, all the stuff that we are preoccupied with, like your job and like being successful, and your friends are looking a certain way or doing certain things. And when you clear all of that out of the way, and all of a sudden you just find yourself peering out of these eye holes, it's like, oh my God, why wouldn't aliens be real? Why wouldn't, I mean, there's so much that like we can't, like you can't even begin to, like Terence said, like it's even stranger than you could even ever comprehend.
Yeah.
Like the strangest thing that like the fucking energy that runs this thing, your heart beating, your hair growing, your fucking mind working, like it's just like, it's mind-boggling. It's fucking mind-boggling.
Yeah, staying in that place of wonder is a good place to be. Keeps things fresh, keeps you humble, keeps you present. I like that, man. A lot. I like that.
Man. Well, I feel really grateful to have you in my life to have these awesome convos with, dude. So
Oh, Eb, I appreciate it, man. Me too. Me too.
we were definitely Atlantean priests together in a past life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, man. I was probably a farmer. Listen to,
Hey, that's cool too.
Yeah. You were the priest and I was the farmer. We were buddies.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Well, shit, man. Thank you, dude. Thank you again for
Yeah.
so much fun. That was a blast. What are you guys doing for Halloween?
My brother and his family are coming with his 2 kids.
Nice.
And we're going to make a bunch of spooky food. Watch a scary movie, wear our skeleton onesies.
Nice.
My house is out in the woods, and so
I love that, dude.
we can count on some coyotes Halloween night. So I'm gonna keep my kids up real late and fill them full of sugar, and then we're gonna go out for a little nunite walk and listen to some coyotes and get real spooked.
I love that, dude.
That's the plan. How about you? What are you guys doing?
That's epic, man.
Yeah.
We're doing a little scavenger hunt with my daughter and her cousins, going around to different family members' houses and having them get some cool stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and then, keep it as spooky as possible.
Yeah.
It'll be really fun.
Cool.
Yeah, man. So we're excited about it. I'm excited. I always love the energy of Halloween.
The veil is thin, man. The veil is thin for sure.
Totally, dude. It's very thin. You could feel the energy has a different vibration to it on Halloween.
Yeah. I'm with you. What's your costume? You gonna do a costume?
It's gonna be on the fly, but I'm thinking like a sorcerer is probably
Perfect.
in the a 2020 sorcerer is where I'm gonna find myself.
That ain't a costume, bro. That's just you.
I know, that's just me every day. Well, it's awesome, brother. Thank you, dude. Happy Halloween to all you guys out there. I hope you have a safe and excellent day, night. Howl at the moon. Fucking, go wild. Let the spirits loose. Thank you guys so much for joining us in this really fun conversation. I hope you guys had a lot of fun with it. Took your mind off the rest of the bullshit happening out there in the world. Because honestly, what's more real than the shit that we feel and don't see? Who's to say that's not as real as the things we see? What is that great quote, Sean? Believe none of what you hear and half of what you see, or something like that. I live by that.
I love that. Yeah, that's good. That makes my heart sing.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you guys so much. The greatest way you can support me in this show is by rating and reviewing on Apple, Spotify, wherever you jam this podcast. And I greatly appreciate it as always. Until next time, I'm out of here. Love y'all. Peace.